Well, thank you very much for inviting me here for this wonderful conference. I was delighted to accept when I was invited. It really is a privilege having seen the quality of the presentations as well as the organization. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you to British Council and this definitely able organizing team. What I'm going to talk about is really essentially about the most essential human rights for everyone. It's about work, employment. This is what everyone expects to get in life because we want to feel valued, we want to have a self-worth, and a job is what we all aspire to get. More or less, we spend most of our life working, and we want to enjoy what we do. Well, that is not a privilege that most disabled people can enjoy. It's partly because society puts barriers in their way because of their impairments. The impairment itself doesn't make a person disabled. What we do in the society actually makes them disabled. They have incredible value to add to the society. They can contribute, and often in our history we've seen many disabled people have made profound difference to the human lives. And you don't need to go back many years. You've got Winston Churchill, who was himself disabled, and yet the world owes their freedom to him. We've got Einstein. He was disabled, but again, he wasn't recognized as being disabled. He was recognized as being not very bright when he was young. Yet he went to prove the world wrong. So we want to really get the best out of everyone. And I would say right now is the best time because technology has advanced to the level where previously we couldn't. The technology can supplement the human beings to overcome the effect of the disability. If I want to map out the journey of a person with disability getting into employment, that would be, I would say, depending where you live in the world, it could be an incredibly hard and arduous journey. It starts from education. A very non-inclusive education system brings up our children as believing that they are not capable. They don't have any self-confidence. When they come through the education, they get excluded from even the basics of our education system because our teachers are not trained to deal with it. When they come to the adolescence and the age where they start feeling that they want the aspirations to develop their skills and they want to do something great in their life, they start feeling that they are not really made up for this world. They're not really able to do what others can. So you can imagine by the age of where they need to enter the employment market, even if there was job opportunities, even if there was a society that had jobs for them, they will find that this is too much of a struggle, they're not good enough, and they probably won't even bother. Even if they do get into employment, quite frankly, after a while, they just feel they're not good enough and they will drop out. So what do we have to do in order to bring back this self-belief to students, to these children who are going to go in employment market? We also have a bigger issue. The world has nearly 1 billion disabled people. We need jobs for them. If we don't have jobs for them, their disability will actually become far too serious for us to do anything with. In UK, they have a very good set of statistics. That's all we have at the moment, very good statistics. We have nearly 2.5 million people who are on employment support. That is the people who really have struggled to get jobs because of their disability or health condition. Those 2.5 million people have remained static. The numbers are not going down. As much as money has been thrown into it, it's not actually having the positive effect that we want to have. Well, that's really partly because employers are not able to cope with it. Employers are not able to look after them. Employers are here to obviously make money. They're not here to do a social enterprise. Government can throw money at it, but again, we don't have, so much money to throw at problems like this. Every country is struggling economically, so they want to make sure the money is spent wisely. And you don't want to support half of your population out of work. You want them to generate wealth. You don't want them to be subject to health and, and social services sort of costs. So we have to really look at this problem as a end-to-end solution. We can't just go on to employers, force them, encourage them to take on more disabled people. They might do it if it is the right incentive, but they would only do it in the small numbers just to demonstrate they are complying or they're actually doing a favor for a government. That's not really what we want. That doesn't even cover 1% of the workforce that need to get into employment. You need to also do something fundamental about the attitudes of our educationalists. We had the old way of dealing with education of let's teach the 80%, the 20% are too expensive to look after. We don't really have resources to focus on the most needy. Let's look after those who can look after themselves. Well, that could have worked maybe a century ago, or 50 years ago, but it doesn't anymore, because those 20% that are not helped will end up on the pile of people you can't actually get them into employment, and that will cost you the 80% of your budget trying to look after them. And, again, go back to UK example, we have many youngsters with disabilities who just never get onto the employment ladder. We have millions of people who had basic needs, and they weren't really severely disabled. They weren't really disabled from birth. Only 17% of people who were born with disabilities will enter the employment market. The rest are the people who develop disabilities either through accidents or through age or whatever that life brings to them. Now, if you don't look after those people when they need it, they will end up in the same pile as those people who are severely disabled from birth and the employers don't know what to do with them. What we really have to now look at, might be out of context for the region. Well, I'm really delighted to see that Qatar is taking the lead in Middle East on looking at this issue and making a fundamental change in the way disability is treated. But what we really need to look at is how do we make that 2030 vision a reality. And that really needs to have involvement with education, with vocational training, because again, everyone wants to get jobs for them. Maybe employers even say, yes, we do want them. But when they end up on the doorstep of an employer, they really need to be able to do a job. They need to be able to keep a job. And that doesn't really happen very easily. You have to really put them into a relatively long period of supported training. That includes mentoring, includes building up their self-esteem, their confidence that they can do the job. And then you find them a job, and then you still have to coach them to keep that job. That itself requires the help of the employers, but at the same time, the government has to do their bit to make sure people who do get jobs and have disabilities are supported for a period until they become independent. And obviously, the final part is going back to education, talking about inclusive education might be easy, but how do we make it happen? We have done quite a lot of work in schools where technology can play a major role. Now, if you look at the disability in education, essentially children will find difficulty with communication. Doesn't matter what the disability is, they are having difficulty in communicating with the rest of the world. Traditionally, the schools were either putting them in a special school, which is really isolating them from the society. More and more people are integrated into mainstream school, but then the teachers are not capable of looking after those with severe needs. But those children do actually need to remain in touch with the rest of the society by communicating with them. If they have difficulty with reading and writing, that shouldn't stop them doing what other things they are good at. They might be very good in arts, they might be very good in engineering, but if they fail their basic literacy, quite frequently they are written off, they can't progress. Again, this is where we find the technology that you will hear from Mada after this session. There is a tremendous amount of development in technology that will allow any individual to fulfill their potential. We need to also have a different way to consider passing and failing in schools. Not everyone is able to pass maths and English as the standard says, but a lot of them could actually learn to work differently. They can actually develop their skills differently. And the vocational training courses is really essentially where you could target those on people who have special needs, and you could make them, give them a classroom environment where they can actually thrive much better on a practical aspect rather than in written form. Of course, this is all rhetoric. We need to really know what happens in real world. I'm delighted to have my team today on the panel, some very active individuals who are helping to bring disability and employment together, trying to get people into employment, and obviously that is an important step towards solving this big problem. I have Faisal Mohammed Al-Koueji, who is chairman of the Qatar Social and Cultural Center. He's also employee of Maersk Oil and is a very active member of that company. And I'm sure he will explain his role in the company much more eloquently than I can. But he will obviously tell you he didn't get a job because he was disabled. He wants to also say the world doesn't need to pity disabled people. Give them a chance, they will actually deliver. We also have a pleasure of having Khalid Al-Shoaibi. He's the director of Voluntary Committee for Employing the Disabled People. And again, his role is very much finding job opportunities for disabled people. And also we have Noura Ali Hassan, who is Programs for Special Needs Development for Supreme Education Council. Her role would be very much like, what is education doing to integrate disabled people into the workplace for the future? Really, that's where the journey begins. So I will invite Faisal to come and do his presentation. Thank you very much.